Okay, folks, welcome to the August 15 Dev Call. We've got a few topics that we're going to go over today. One is an update on message broadcasting from Warpcast and Hubs. Another is on storage extension, the new FIP that we proposed. And then we have some more minor updates on sign-in with Farcaster, the new Explore page, and some Warpcast improvements. So let me jump right into these topics. And as always, if you have other things that you want to discuss, we can roll it up at the end. So message broadcasting. We've been trying to debug a few issues with message broadcasting. So for background, Warpcast has been moving its message processing over to a new background system, and that's come with a few issues. So one thing you may notice on status.warpcast.com today is the number of unwritten messages spiked a little bit last night. And we're working on figuring out whether that's actually unwritten messages or whether it's an issue with our job processor that's making us think they're unwritten messages. For the most part, it looks like the number of messages written has been pretty static. So we think that like the best case is that 100% of messages are being written, and this is actually like a false flag. And the worst case is 99.9% of messages are being written, and there's an issue with 0.1% that we're debugging. So team is actively working on that today, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of that quickly. There are two other sub-issues that are happening right now, and I just wanted to flag it for visibility. One is we've noticed some state differences between Warpcast and Nanar, which Sanjay and Manan have been working on. And we think that a lot of this is going to be resolved by getting Nanar over to Shuttle, which is the sync system that we've built from moving data from Hub to Postgres. Nanar, I think, still uses some non-shuttle systems for their sync, and that will solve sort of the last tail of these issues. Again, we think these are fairly minor, and Sanjay on our team is working on making some changes to Shuttle to make it easier for Nanar to migrate. But once you're using this piece of infrastructure, all of this will be done. And again, that's sort of why we built Shuttle, so that every team doesn't have to reinvent their own logic of how to sync data from hubs to Postgres. You can run this piece of infra, and it should all work. We're also tracking down one other bug where like one message on, I think Christopher's hub seems to have issues syncing from Shuttle to the database. So we'll be looking into that as well. But top priority is the job broadcasting issues. Third, just as an FYI, we're seeing issues with performance on one of our hubs, which appears to be now under heavy load. Things are taking a little longer to write, and things are a little slower, which might be exacerbating some of these other issues. And so that's the third thing that our team is focused on. We don't think this affects any other hubs. I think this is purely a side effect of Warpcast publishes a lot of stuff to its hubs and does a lot of reconciliation and extra work. And that is reaching a point where we're hitting some bottlenecks in how the gRPC server works and how writing to disk works. And we're working on fixing all of that. So these three issues are sort of different flavors of why some messages are still out of sync. Again, we think they're fairly rare. We actually haven't been able to find any instances of things not syncing between hubs per se. So if you have examples of messages that your apps are not seeing or that you're dealing with, please let us know. Specific examples are always very helpful to help us track things down. Let me pause here and see if folks have any questions. There's one on our gRPC timeout issues specifically for writes or also for read streaming. I believe we've seen them on writes so far. That's kind of primarily where we're seeing the additional load. It's sometimes hard to measure because we see it most in write latency as it pops up, but it is quite possible that reads are also adding extra strain, which then in turn is causing writes stuff. Oh, interesting. That's actually good data. Cassie on our team is looking into the gRPC timeouts and is kind of deep in the weeds on how things work. Our hypothesis is that most of our gRPC issues are due to the way we've set up our load balancer and is very hyper-specific to our configuration, but it's very useful data if you're seeing it on your hubs too. Cool. Let me keep rolling on to the next issue. Okay, so storage extension. The storage extension FIP is probably one of the more important ones that we're pushing out this year. So you can click on it and read the proposal in detail, and it kind of goes into all the mechanics of how this will work. But let me walk through it at a high level. So intention behind storage extension is we want to make it as easy as possible for people to continue using Farcaster. There's a version of the world where we design storage to expire every year, and the idea being that we might change the way storage works or might get new users to onboard and pay for storage, especially if hubs were struggling to keep up with demand and we actually wanted to prune data from hubs. In the world that we find ourselves, while we have sync issues with hubs, we actually don't have many storage issues, and we're completely fine onboarding, another 2x, 3x, 4x more users on the current infra. And so expiring storage right now would hurt the user experience and deliver no meaningful benefit to hubs. So our proposal right now is to say, hey, while we're in this place, let's extend everyone's storage by a year. So users don't have to come on board, don't have to pay again, do on-chain transactions, all of these high friction activity, and everyone just kind of gets one more year for free. And we will revisit this decision next August when the first storage unit starts expiring again. The second change that we're bundling into this was actually in a separate FIP and we've merged it in here, is to reduce the size of storage units going forward. So one thing that we've noticed is most users simply never extend beyond their first storage unit, and they have a lot of just extra space allocated to them that's not being used right now. And so we want to change the size of the storage units to be smaller so that users get a more appropriately sized storage unit, and then they can always buy more storage units in the future. Smaller storage units give us more flexibility also to reduce prices in the future. So now once smaller units launch, if hub utilization is still low, we might be able to take storage fees from $3 to $2 to $1 and things like that. So moving smaller just generally feels like it doesn't affect the user experience, gives us more flexibility, and it feels like the correct move. So to recap the changes, everyone who's registered from now until August 26th, their storage units are valid for 2 years. And no change to the size. They still get the same size. Everyone who registers after August 26th, their storage units are valid for a year, and they will get the new sizing going forward. And this change will be rolled out at the hub level. We have a patch that's out for review right now that could be used, and we will be able to just upgrade this and roll forward. There should be no impact to users. I mean, for the most part, everyone just continues using Farcaster. There should be no impact to developers building apps. Again, nothing really changes. And the only change for hub operators is you will have to upgrade to a new version of the hub, which we will release in a few days, and then min version by August 24th. The exact details are in this FIP, so it'll be min version on, August 26th during working hours, and then the new limits kick in on August 28th. You can kind of go through all of this if you have questions on the specific details and the specific size changes and anything to that effect. Cool. Let me pause there and see if folks have any questions, concerns, feedback on any of this. That's right. There's a comment. For those of you who've been around for a while, storage originally cost $12 back in the day when we first launched, and we've managed to successfully reduce that and scale hubs since then. And hopefully we'll continue doing that. Okay, no questions. We'll keep rolling. If there are any, feel free to step up or post them in chat. So next up, I'll actually turn it over to Dan and Horsefacts to talk about sign-in with Farcaster. They're focused on improving reliability this week and taking some of the feedback we've gotten.
Yeah, maybe I'll start, and then Horsefacts can get in a little bit to like what's actually happening. So consistent feedback is signing with Farcaster is useful. Like we've seen, as you can see on the Explore tab, like a bunch of apps, new exciting consumer apps from like pretty well-known teams are using the Farcaster graph permissionlessly, whether it's just take an Ethereum address and enhance the graph with the graph, like basically like dwr.eth, like boom, I can immediately show you all the Farcaster friends, or you use signing with Farcaster to kind of improve the onboarding experience. But there's like a consistent group of like 10 to 15% of people who at least claim that they can't scan the QR code. And so I think one thing we want to do here is like get the reliability up under the existing system before we approach like any additional scope increases in terms of like supporting Supercast and other wallets that have asked in the past about doing this. But I think it's like a trade-off of, is this the highest priority? And I think let's get to close to 100% reliability first, feel like that's baked and good, and then kind of consider where does other Farcaster apps work within signing with Farcaster relative to other dev priorities. Horsax, do you just kind of want to get an overview of what we're actually working on?
Yeah, we can talk through kind of the specific technical details here. So one goal here is to shorten the sign-in URL as much as possible, which results in a more legible QR code. So two approaches here. One thing we're going to do is shorten the channel token ID, which right now is a UUID, to an 8-character code. So still sufficiently random. These are, really just used to establish the shared channel between the two sides in this login communication. Ultimately, they're passing a signature over the channel, so we feel okay about shortening this to 8 characters. So this will still be random. But yeah, that shortens the URL first off significantly. Second thing here is to pass the C-way parameters. So you have other stuff like the nonce, the sign-in URI, a bunch of other sign-in with Ethereum parameters that you can add to this signature when you request it. We're passing those through a URL right now. That's nice and easy because it's stateless and fast, but we're going to sacrifice a little bit of that to shorten these URLs. So we'll pass that through the channel instead. So if you are a wallet client, I don't think anyone out there is a wallet client besides us, but if you are, you'll need to get those parameters by making a request to the relay channel rather than just grabbing them out of the deep link or out of the URL. Yeah, so this should shorten these. You can see kind of an example down here at the bottom of how this will shorten the code from something that's large and long and less legible to something that's much easier to scan in app. The second benefit of these short channel tokens is that they're human readable, and humans can potentially even enter them in something like kind of like if you connect your TV to Netflix, they'll give you an 8-character code that you enter on your TV. Or if you do a magic link, they'll send you an 8-character link. We can do a similar kind of workflow where we'll pop up that modal on web, or even potentially a third-party client, Supercast, HeroCast, someone like that could use this to set up a channel in the future. So that's not like in the immediate change that we're going to make here, but it kind of lays a foundation for us to go build something like that in the longer term.
A couple other just considerations. One, we have punted on whether or not we change the sign with Farcaster to use EDDSA keys, which obviously then would make it easy for like Supercast not even have another wallet. It could just like work on web. So that's like a longer term item to solve for. There's some security implications there. Obviously, it would require changing the standard. You're moving away from signing with Ethereum as the kind of foundation, but an item on the radar for later. And then I think on the more immediate, like, the UI, like open Warpcast, like I think just being more explicit there on the deep link to just like make sure it works on mobile. But I think there's a world where we do add the other clients that are willing to do the work here. But I'm also hesitant to get to a world where you have something like Wallet Connect where you have like 70 options. Like that's just not consumer friendly. Crypto people are used to it, but like I think what we want to do is like think from the ground up in terms of like what is a scalable solution. So I think once we have 1 or 2, like sure we can just have a few deep links, but once you get to kind of like 10, I think we should actually be rethinking about like what is the default experience that we can scale to as many apps as want to be Farcaster wallets. But we'll progressively solve that. I think the goal here is get to 99%, reliability before we worry about additional scope.
Cool. And then next topic is
one more thing in terms of the rollout here too. I think we can do this in 2 phases. So we will probably initially today, tomorrow, as soon as it's ready, we'll roll out the relay changes, which means you'll see the short channel ID, and we on the Warpcast side will update to handle these this new URL scheme where we're passing the parameters through the channel. I think we can safely make that change because we're the only ones who are doing that authentication right now. So that's pretty straightforward to roll out. And you should see kind of in the existing UI, the QR codes will just get shorter. And then second step will be to actually update the UI, update authkit, and folks who are depending on that can go update. But we'll probably do that in 2 phases here over the next few days.
Yeah, and one last thing to just add here. This is a good example of where if we had invested in trying to make this more decentralized up front without actually solving the reliability, this would be probably 10x more complicated in terms of trying to get everything coordinated and then getting on everybody else's roadmaps to make sure that they upgrade, versus a version where we're able to do this, like actually get to a place where we feel like, okay, this is rock solid, and then we can actually go think about how do we make this more decentralized. The other thing to think about here is like Nanar and Privy both have implementations to varying degrees of like the sign-in with Farcaster. You have sign-in with Nanar, and the Privy has done the sign-in with Farcaster. And so we have to go coordinate with them. Like as Forsax said, we're going to try to make this backwards compatible, which is a good lesson where every time we put something out as a primitive and then we haven't actually nailed it from like the core, it just is going to move a lot slower. And so our bias to try to keep things centralized and simple to the degree that is a pragmatic approach while we're figuring things out, I think like works pretty well. And then once we know the thing is working really well, take the time to ossify it.
There was one question about an issue with callback from sign in with Farcaster not working in iOS from Christopher. Connor, I
Yeah,
don't
we
know
should
if you want
follow
to
up on
take
that. We introduced a callback URL. I don't know if you're using that or not.
Yeah,
May have been one of those
I'm
things
trying
that
to do
went
it, but
on. Yeah.
yeah, what happens is if you have the signer, it won't open the coordinated app. I think it might be because you have to be listening to that deep link within inside the Warpcast application. On web, it's fine. Web is fine, but app to app doesn't work.
Interesting. Yeah, let's follow up on that and we'll look into it. I know some apps are doing it, like Buoy, I think, uses that redirect. So, but yeah, let's debug offline.
Cool. Next topic is explore page. Again, Dan and Horsefacts, if you guys want to take this over.
Yeah, let me just give some high level context. The other thing I want to add is the other thing on our radar here, I should have added this to the list, is transactions with Coinbase Wallet and the Wallet protocol seem like they've ticked up in terms of their like failures, like you tap a button, it doesn't work, or you get to the wallet and it doesn't see it. I think we're going to rotate probably onto that after we've kind of improved sign with Farcaster. I think getting examples, so I tried to get some yesterday, really helpful. Anytime you have a screen recording of something not working, feel free to send it to me. I know we don't have video on DCs right now, but feel free to send it to me on Twitter, DM, or send me an email or ping me, and we can figure out how to get that. But I think that the kind of like overall goal here is like to make sure that the Legos that we have are reliable. I think we did a lot of surface area increase over the last 6 months, and I think we're in a place where like focus on the core set of things that we have, make sure that they're really reliable, and then like work on new functionality. That's one of the reasons we haven't increased direct casts. It's like we added programmatic direct casts, but I think some of the basics just need to still be solved. And in a world where that feels more stable, we can actually start thinking about like what are the new programmatic features we can add there. And I think Explore page just like fits into this overall theme of like we've got all of these people building on the ecosystem rather than kind of focusing on the next new Lego. Like let's actually try to highlight some of the people who are building. Like, we've had consistent feedback since the beginning of frames that like frames feel really ephemeral. There's no good way to discover frames. Like how can I go find stuff before? And so Explore, I think, is a first step towards creating kind of a canonical place of like, here's the best of what's happening on Farcaster. And maybe Horsefacts, if you kind of want to just give an overview of like some of the stuff that you're focused on here, that would be useful.
Yeah, I think we're watching the new feature and kind of collecting data on where we want to invest and focus next. But we have plenty of stuff we can imagine adding here. I think making it on the developer side, we have a lot of tooling we could do to make it easier, all the way back to like composer actions. I think there's tooling there with creating your metadata, uploading your app, submitting to get featured on this Explore page. A lot we can invest in and build there to make that easier for devs. Right now, that's a pretty manual process. Do go hit that button and fill out the form if you have something you want to feature on that page. We will have browsing and searching and categorization. I think in the further afield future, lots of interesting things we can do around even potentially authenticating to an app right out of that page. Right, we can sign you in with Farcaster, things like that. But yeah, plenty to focus on there. Yeah, deep links. Sam mentions this. Yeah, that's definitely on the radar as well. Like ability to deep link into a composer action, deep link to pages on the store. We have web as well, right? So folks can link to their storefront page for their app on web. So quite a backlog there. And interested, I think, in prioritization, like hearing feedback from devs on what is useful to you and where we should prioritize there.
Cool.
Some questions from chat. Yeah, we had deep links soon, but no known timeline. But definitely, I think that's high-ish on priority. Where can we submit apps to the Explore page? So yeah, if you go in app easiest way to find it, go in app to the Explore page, just tap the globe in the center, scroll down to the bottom, and there's a Submit App button, which takes you directly to the form. Will there be options to create private or internal composer actions? That's interesting. Yeah, I would be interested to hear more about the use case there. It's not something we've thought about, but yeah, maybe share more. Workcast specific is a cast iframe to embed on other websites plan. Seems like low-hanging fruit to embed workcast bangers in other websites. Do you mean there, Vlad, like embedding casts themselves, or like embedding interactive content like frames and actions?
I'm happy to answer this one. Like, this is a thing Twitter did in the ad tech era, like where basically the goal was to actually embed it so that they could get cookies and things on other people's websites. I don't think it's like a huge use case, and we have the ability to generate an image, and I think most people just take a screenshot. So at some point, maybe, but I think like it is a little bit anachronistic, especially on mobile. Like, people just don't do that. It's like sharing a link is like 10x more common, 100x more common.
Yeah, I think the meta basically has shifted from embedded web page to share in direct message or share in Signal chat group or whatever. And so the thing that we're really focused on is like, can we make that link preview even better for you when you embed something inside an app? And I think that will get like 1000x more usage than a web page embed for now.
Yeah, one interesting thing, if you look on Threads, just like obviously run by the Instagram team, they've actually moved the messaging icon to their like primary icon, just like Instagram. And the other thing they've added is counts. So you can actually see on any thread post how many private shares it's had, which is actually something that like I don't think any other app has done, even Instagram.
Cool. Any other questions on sign in with Farcaster Explore page? If not, we'll move on to some Warpcast updates. Okay, cool. Warpcast, couple of things that we're working on right now. So one is feed improvements. So one of the things that we've been measuring pretty aggressively is like how the sort of construction of your feed changes as you add more and less users. And one of the things we've noticed, Tony actually pointed this out a while ago, is that once you start following a lot of users who cast a lot, like say Dan, they tend to take up a lot of real estate in your feed, and you end up not seeing some of the other users you follow. So this isn't a problem if you follow like 50, 100 users, but if you're following like close to 1,000 users and you have a few high volume users, you're going to be much less likely to see stuff from people who are good, but just happen to cast once a week or once every couple of days and things like that. And the problem with that is it becomes self-reinforcing, where because you don't see their cast, you never like them. Because you don't like them, people, algo, whatever, thinks you have low affinity and is less likely to show you their stuff in the future. So the change that we're making, we'll roll out an experiment sometime this week, is to see if we can identify these situations and actually give these people a boost. So we sort of bring them back up in your feed, surface this content to you, and then if you like it, more likely to see more of it. And if you don't like it, then you're less likely to see more of it. So we're going to roll out that experiment hopefully sometime this week. And if it's successful, roll it out to a broader group of users. Second thing is Power Badge deprecation. We talked about this in the last dev call, and our mental model here is one, Power Badge is going away in Warpcast. We don't show it in the UI anymore. We don't use it in many places in the app anymore, or actually any. I think we fully deprecated it. And we still have it available over an API for developers, but that's also going to be sunset at the end of August. So two things on this. One, why is Warpcast not using it internally? We've basically found that it's not a particularly useful measure for a lot of things like priority notifications, and we've developed other systems that kind of have a better impact. So for example, previously when you had priority mode on, we would only show you casts from people with Power Badge. Now we kind of have an inverted model where we actually identify spammy users and we move that to show more, and everything else kind of comes about the fold. So this has actually been a positive change for new users. And we're implementing similar things in other places where we use Power Badge, where we have our own ranking systems or other systems that are tailored to that specific use case. And so this general notion of Power Badge has kind of gone away inside Warpcast. For developers, we know that some folks in the ecosystem are still rely on Power Badge or use it as a signal to filter users or give certain users ability to log into stuff and whatnot. And we're making it available over our API till the end of this month. And then Nanar is committed to having a Power Badge API that is also available going forward that will continue to get updates and continue to be refreshed. if you have any concerns about this, if you have any issues with this, we want to make sure all developers are fully supported and that nobody is in a situation where they don't have access to this data. But we are going to transition ownership of this from us to Nanar, and you can use that, or you can use Airstack's, user score. I assume everyone building Farcaster info will have some version of quality score of their own flavor going forward. Cool. Any questions on either feed quality or power badge deprecation? There might be some in the chat. Will priority notifications also be cleaned up so that it's one or two notification tabs that are more simple, like priority and mentions is only tabs? Not at the moment. I think some users still want the ability to kind of drill deep and find things, and it seems to matter to them, but potentially over time, if that becomes less important, we might change it. What determines if someone's posted frame is auto-collapsed? I believe we have a few different signals on this. Horsefacts, correct me if I'm wrong here, but one is if you follow the user and you have high affinity with the user, we're going to say, hey, we're going to expand the frame. If you don't follow the user, we're going to make a judgment based on a bunch of qualitative factors of like how far away in the network are you? Do you have like a spammy user flag on the network, et cetera, and then make a judgment on whether or not to expand it. Feed algo, are you looking into the content or the caster? My understanding is that feed is optimized by casting FID, not cast content. So when the way the feed algo works, or the signals that we feed in, are primarily relationship metrics, which is how much have you interacted with this person before? How far away are you? So for example, if you directly follow this person, that's more likely to show up. If you directly follow this person and you've liked a lot of their stuff and you replied, it's far more likely to show up. If you follow people who have liked this, it's also far more likely to show up. So that's kind of one set of metrics. The other set of more global metrics is how much engagement does this have in aggregate. So a cast that has 1,000 likes is more likely to bump up in your feed than a cast that has 1 like. And the final chunk is time. So obviously something newer has higher priority than something older, all other factors held equal. We don't yet do any kind of content analysis. That's actually something we've been wanting to do. So you can think of using vector embeddings or other things to figure out, hey, users tend to like this kind of content. Let's show them more of this. But we do use channels which kind of proxy that, where we're able to understand, okay, you like a lot of stuff in the memes channel. Let's show you more of this and so on. Okay. Let me kind of go through the questions. There's been a few things. Feed algo, how important are recent interactions versus historical interactions? We feed in like a few different variations, but typically like your last 30 days are the most impactful in determining what you see next. So whenever engagement is measured, it typically looks at your patterns over the last 30 days. So that means that if your preferences change, they do get reflected, but it has enough of a history that it's not super biased to what did I like yesterday. I think deprecating power badge is a positive change. I still see the old faces. However, now I won't visually skip. Yeah, that's kind of the big thing, is like a lot of new users are getting sort of locked out because they wouldn't have the power badge and they would end up churning. And now that bias is slightly shifted, where you are still going to see new users and they have an even playing field to be able to get you to engage with them or interact with them. Okay, trying to see if there's any more questions. I think we have a couple on the explore page that came up, so maybe we can rotate back to that really quickly. Explore page from what can we expect in next 1 to 2 months? What is the ranking based on?
Yeah, so I think right now it's manual. I don't think the signals are as well defined as we'd want right now, because I think one of the challenges is like it's easily gamed, right? So as soon as you have a thing, then people are going to be like, oh, here's some crypto token. If you click this thing or do this thing to like kind of boost it, and so it'll actually quickly lose people's interest if it just feels like pay to play. So that's not perfect. Manual's not perfect. So I think we need to kind of evolve and figure this out. I think for right now, it's like get the basics right. Like we should add search to the main screen, like have a rotating set of categories, feature apps, be able to like kind of make sure people are clicking through to it. So power users will click through to it, but the average casual people don't click on new tabs. So making sure people are aware. So I think there's just a lot of basics of like getting to a ground level of like people are aware of the Explore tab and find it useful. It's high quality. I think the like ideal is to get to an algorithmic, like meritocratic system of like, okay, your app is doing good things, like you're going to be up in the rankings. But I think we should be thoughtful about that. Apple obviously can put their hand on the scale, and people don't know. Like it's like downloads. I don't know if I even believe that. Like I think it's like there are certain counts that get removed. But I think overall, people tend to be pretty excited about like moving up the rankings. So totally hear that. I think it's just going to take us some time. The biggest challenge for us is we need to hire, right? Like we've got a team working on hub stability, we've got a team working on DCs, team working on feed, and right now it's just HorseFacts plus Pearl on the team working with me on the kind of explore page, in addition to sign with Farcaster and other things. And so I think we can get one or two other people on the team, we're going to have the ability to like add more features here. Any other questions on that? Varun, did you see anything?
Cool. Scrolling back to the list, there's a lot.
Wouldn't it lead to the rich get richer? Well, there's a certain quality bar, right? It's like make something great, like you're going to get featured on it. Like taste actually matters. Like I think the whole way the network worked is like, 10,000 initial people came through me, and like I wasn't perfect on anyone, but there's a certain quality bar that I think you put on it. Like I think that is a far better initial experience than something that is like a game that not having all the data yet, like it ends up being kind of like scamming, and like people are basically abusing it.
I think this is one thing we have a pretty strong opinion on, just after having seen how cast actions and other things have played out, which is that if you have a leaderboard that's based on any kind of social network interactions, someone will launch a token, say you get more of this token for getting the interactions, and that thing will always be on the top of the leaderboard. And there's no incentive to build actually useful applications that don't have a token, because this is the only way you get to the top. And so we actually think that that's like not the right set of incentives for getting new apps built, and actually having a quality bar and being able to surface interesting stuff is like much more useful.
Yeah, I think just like a broader point is like basically PageRank solved this for the web. Like prior to PageRank for search engines, like there were all these games, and then PageRank kind of solved it. We have yet to like kind of figure that system out for Farcaster. Like we've done a little bit in terms of our spam labeling and power badge and all that kind of stuff. But I think that is actually the long-term solution, is we have to have some algo that weights quality, because if not, it's crypto. People are going to figure out the financial way to boost and game anything. And so I think like that is one way to think about this, is that you can't make it as much as it would be nice, like purely egalitarian, like one person, one vote. Like we have to have some level of weighting, because otherwise people are going to look at the attention that you can get from being at the top of one of these lists and say, I'm just going to go create a bunch of accounts and smurf my way up there. And so I think like it's something that we're just going to have to be iterative on. And I'd rather have it be a little more static and hit a quality bar that we feel good about. Albeit it's going to be a little bit unfair if you're not on that list, or you feel like you should be higher on that list. Great, ship more product. Like, let me know. Like, if I see a Screen Studio on the feed of like someone making progress, it's more likely to be like, hey, let's pump this app up there, or feature it this week, or let people know. Like, I think proof of work is actually the biggest signal in terms of where this list is right now.
Cool. Last topic we have is DC improvements. I don't think there's anything large to talk about. There's a bunch of smaller things the team has been working on. Dan, I don't know if you want to give a quick overview on some of the stuff you're thinking about.
Yeah, so we've just been grinding through. I asked for feedback of like what are frustrating things for people, specifically for people who move group chats, which I think are like the best thing that we have potentially for driving retention, to Telegram, and just work our way down that list. I think folders probably doesn't make a huge difference in the scheme of things, even though people say that that's like a power user feature that they want. But like if your large group like is janky, and like when you scroll, it doesn't go fast enough, and like you can't click on a pin cast to go, which by the way, some of that stuff has been fixed in the background. Like those are all things that we need to just grind through. And I think once we're in a place where we feel like, when I'm asking for product, like, what's on your wish list? If it's like, I want stickers, I think we're probably in a place that we're like hit a level of stability. Whereas when I consistently still see like bugs that people can actually show, and it's like, okay, my Android device doesn't work with a group of 100 plus people, That's just like core performance we need to be at. And then when we get there, that's actually where we've earned the right, in my mind, to actually expand the surface area around APIs, because we now know that like, okay, our APIs are solid enough that we can actually handle third-party developers actually now doing read-write like at a bigger scale, and then actually thinking about interoperability, getting it out of the Warpcast infrastructure, and then eventually, decentralization and encryption. And so I think we just want to be super open and just like, we want to get these things rock solid, and any improvements we are making now, in theory, people get for free, in the sense that like we've learned the hard lesson, and whatever version we push towards interoperability, we're going to be able to be like, for those who are a little bit more knowledgeable about this stuff, like, hey, virtualized lists are probably not as good on web to do for a conversation. Like, you should use this, or like, we've actually modified flash lists or some way to like make it work really well React Native on mobile. Like, these are all things that like, if we just gave people the APIs, you'd go spend a month and you wouldn't even come close to hitting the level of polish, versus actually getting to a place where we can actually say, here are the best practices, and you can kind of like get a DC experience that would be like pretty decent without a ton of work. That's a result of like us kind of grinding through a lot of these hard things.
Cool.
Programmatic add remove. Yeah, it's like one of the highest like priority items as soon as we get to the stability thing. And that might be, in the next couple of weeks. So like as much as we make progress, and then I think 1,000-person limit, probably. I'd have to kind of talk to the team in terms of like what we think. And videos is the next big feature to add. So we have a bunch of performance stuff in nits, but in terms of like new functionality, it's video. And then search, but I think we're going to hold off on search because I'd like to see what our long-term architecture is going to be. One preview, by the way, and I think this will be a little controversial, but it like makes sense, is we are going to put a 1-year expiration on all chats. Like, I actually think if you want to move it to a decentralized system long-term, and we'll write this up in a more formal way just so people know, but I think like you don't want to actually guarantee permanent storage of chats. Like it's a crazy amount of overhead to think about, and it just makes a really simple system of like chats last for a year, and it will probably actually put a default back to most chats being auto-deleting after a certain amount of time. Just it like massively improves the kind of default posture. It's also just good security practice. I think people are way too focused on saving old chats. Like, good to just have it auto clean up. And so we'll kind of have that as a proposal, but I think that will make a big difference also in terms of just like our ability to scale the other parts of performance. If we know that we don't have to like hold, infinite amount of messages for a group of, 10,000 people or something like that. Zenny, I would love to say I believe you, but I don't think we're quite there in terms of Telegram. I spent a lot of time doing the exact same things in Telegram and Warpcast. We're definitely making improvements. I think we've gotten a lot of the like baseline jank, but the performance can hit an even higher level, I think. Plans for increasing upload limits, self-hosting images. I'm pretty sure you can help self-host an image. If you just put an image on your web server and you link to it with the .png or JPEG, I think it renders in the app. I could be wrong. I think that generally this is like people ask for this stuff, like, oh, add GIFs, add animated PFPs, like add video, like all this stuff doesn't make a huge difference in a text-based social network. Like, we have the basics. I would be more convinced here if like there was like a massive like client that was driving, like text or video only content or image only content that felt really native. I think like, Dracula is probably the closest to this. And then obviously you have Moshicam and a couple others, but I'm just generally skeptical of like going and investing in media where it like basically you have like 0.1% of creators are going to potentially use it rather than, like basically everybody. So anytime we can improve the overall feed or text-based content, I think is like a much higher leverage thing. But I could be convinced. I mean, like, look, if Supercast was doing this and like artists were just like, oh man, this is so great, like I think it would be kind of more of a priority for us. But I haven't actually seen that. Like, people basically continue to use the tools that we have, and they're fine with it. So.
Cool. Great. I think that brings us to the end of the call. We maybe have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Looking through the chat right now. Okay, don't think we have any open questions. So great, let's wrap this here, folks. And if you have anything, as always, you can DM, DCS, or post on Warpcast, and we're happy to respond. All right, thanks everyone. Video will be uploaded soon.